we are live. Spoilers in this video, including for earlier entries in this franchise. Terminator 5 Genisys Thoughts Film. This is a long video, but there are time codes for different sections in the description box. Since I've done other videos on the subject, the links will be in the description box, and I'll try not to restate here what I said there. And I suppose more specifically, the link to the playlist of all my videos on the Terminator franchise is going to be in the description box. So, my own film critic rating for this is an 8 out of 10, just as it was back when it came out in 2015. And my personal rating, again, it is now, as it was then, an 8 out of 10. And yes, when I did a video on Terminator 2, the 30th, let's see, I'm terrible at remembering, the 30th of the third month, January, February, March, I guess, whatever. Yes, when I made a video on that back then, I said if there was going to be a sequel at all, which I do still think there should only be one Terminator movie, and that's the first one. If there was going to be any sequel at all, I would prefer Genisys to be the second movie and the only sequel instead of the second movie, since Genisys, I mean, look, Terminator 2 ruins so many things, and I know I just cut my audience down by like 75%. Anyway, Genisys doesn't really, I respectfully disagree with those who say that it ruins, and I guess that is it. But yeah, you know, I still agree with that statement. You know, back then I had watched Genisys since, I guess, a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, something like that. Now, while I do still think that ideally a Terminator movie is 100 minutes or less, I do think that this movie has enough action and the plot moves fast enough that it is perfectly fine. I mean, this movie is like 2 hours, not counting the end credits, and 2 hours and 5.5 minutes if you do count them. And yeah, you know, comparatively, let's see, the first and the third, no, I'm not saying the third is that good of a Terminator movie, but I do respect that it knows to keep it brief. You know, the first movie is, yeah, just under, like, it's 99 minutes or so, and so is the third movie, and yeah, you can tell when you watch them, you know, it doesn't linger, because it's, like, if it has Terminator in the title, then it should be like the movie itself, efficient, and not like if a Terminator movie goes on for a really long time, it's because the Terminator is terrible in its job, and that's the case with the second movie, and that's why these other movies are, you know, the fourth one doesn't have a Terminator in it really, except for at the very end, so you can somewhat forgive that one for that, but anyway. Right, so we are gonna jump into a section called Notes Taken While Watching. Time right, there we go. Very epic opening logos, and we open on a main character narrating, just like the second and third movie do, rather than text like the first and fourth movie do. And yeah, let me just briefly, I think it works incredibly well with text in the first one. Part of it is probably, if there was a voice narrating, immediately the audience would be like, who's that? And I'm not sure that Kyle Reese would really be narrating. You know, then it'd be like, oh, when we hear him talk, yeah, when he asks the cop, you know, what year is this? We'd recognize his voice. You know, Michael Biehn has a distinct enough voice that you recognize it. But why would he be narrating, though? He's not really... Yeah, you know, the second movie opens, and it's Sarah Connor narrating, and it's like, oh, she is, you know, she's back, and she's prepared for this situation. And then the third one, it's John, and, you know, John sounds different than the last time we heard him, but Nick Stahl has a very distinctive voice, you know, and if you've watched even a single trailer, if you know almost, you know, yeah, and certainly you meet him. Yeah, doesn't he says his own name. He says, I'm John Connor, I think, pretty early on. So, anyway. And in this, you know, Jai Courtney has a distinctive enough voice. Yeah, and he also says, "When I first met John Connor," or something like that. So we know it's Kyle. So, like the second movie, we open on narration reflecting on all that was lost in Judgment Day in the war. I suppose, yeah, this more than that. Really, in with Terminator 2, it's more. No, no, doesn't it? Doesn't it? It's been a while since I watched it because I don't like the movie. I think it starts with Sarah saying on Judgment Day, what was it, 3 billion lives were lost, something like that. So yeah, yeah. So both of them do. So the opening of the second movie, it's a bunch of children in a playground, but in this we see way more people and from different groups and such. I gotta say, I find this way more effective of an opening to a Terminator movie. It's a huge upgrade from the second movie. Again, I still my favorite is still the first. I'm not gonna say every time because I'd be saying nothing else in this video. Just blanket. I prefer it the way it is in the first movie, and I prefer it if the first movie was the only Terminator movie. If the second movie had to exist, and I'd like to make, I made the case that it doesn't. I don't think it should be connected to the first one. Avatar isn't a sequel to Aliens, even though we have the kind of mech. I realize that it's not quite the same, but it is still a mech kind of suit. I should probably have started with, you have the Marines, very similar in those two movies. And you have this planet that's very hostile to human life. Sorry, planet with alien beings that's, hostile to human life. Yeah, and it's that other guy playing the Michael Biehn role. I get that James Cameron didn't want people to think it was just another Aliens movie, and he already cast Sigourney Weaver, and she is great in both of those movies. But I do still feel like, it's Michael Biehn, but in an evil version of that character. Just, yeah. Anyway, those two movies are not connected, even though James Cameron employs very similar things in both of those movies. So why couldn't Terminator 2? I've gone on about that in other videos. I'm not going to go on about it here. Anyway, yeah, the cracked people, they joke, oh, I guess that, that playground was the only target that was blown up by a nuke because it's the only one we ever see. And it's like, in this one, you see other people. It's just, I'm sorry, but opening on, look at these children smiling, laughing, and they're dead. They all got nuked. I'm sorry, do we really need to go that dark right at the very start? Is that really necessary? And in this one, it feels more like, yeah, I'm sorry, it's the moment that you kill kids in a piece of fiction, much less in the real world. Obviously, I'm sorry. Obviously, don't kill kids in real life. I'm not kidding about that. But yeah, just do not expand that Wikipedia article about serial killers by actually going out and killing people. The moment that you in a piece of fiction kill kids, it's just you really need to justify that. You don't just do that. And in this one, yeah, there are kids, but it's families, it's people in general. So it doesn't have so much that a bunch of 8-year-olds just got nuked, as much as almost everybody died. You look at the people in this opening, and it's like, they look like me. They look like my family and friends. It really gets that across very nicely. Now, I like that this has these red scanning lasers and such for the hunter killers. You see the flying hunter killer, and in the first movie, I'm not gonna say it because you already know what I'm gonna say. But in the first movie, it's basically what's that called? Searchlight. It's like, it's obviously making you think of like camps, and later in the movie, very specifically, like extermination camps. But yeah, it's making you see one right at the start, and it's got the you recognize that as they are looking for people, and once they find those people, bad things are going to happen to those people. And then in this, They have, they take the red from the pupil of a Terminator, and they put that in more places. So the searchlight is now red. Excuse me, and you've got the lasers. Just I feel like it's a good idea to lean more into that red. It was always. I mean, I'm not going to claim that the first Terminator invented it. HAL, I want to say 9,000, but it's been forever since I watched that movie, which I know, shame on me. 2001: Space Odyssey, gotta watch that movie again. HAL 9,000 with the red, which is also, GLaDOS is more HAL 9,000 than, any Terminator related thing. You know, anyway, yeah, it has that all-seeing eye, Big Brother is always watching you kind of thing. But in that, it is just the eye, and I think it makes a lot of sense for a Terminator movie to have a lot more of that red. And again, I don't think it would have worked as well in the first one. But part of it is that the first one in 1984, when people saw that stuff, it looked a lot like kind of you've got the skulls, and the enemies are clearly robots, but you've got tanks and jets, and you've got a bunch of people crawling around on the ground with handheld rifles and such. It reminded people of like World War II and that kind of thing, so not so much Vietnam, because I would say more World War II, but yeah, because there weren't that many tanks in Vietnam, I want to say, but it's been yeah, it's been a long time since I sat down and did research on Vietnam, and I tend to forget things if a long time passes. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say it reminded people of World War II, but you have a robot enemy and you have all these skeletons, especially skulls, So yeah, it is like this. Yeah, the reason I said skeletons is because they just put out the second trailer for Terminator 6, and that has skeletons. I'm not going to be talking about that trailer in this video. Just don't hold your breath. I'm going to talk about it when I review the movie, and yes, I am watching the movie, even though I'm not crazy excited about it or anything. It's a Terminator movie. I've literally only been able to watch 2, 3, 4. Holy crap, I completely forgot the third and fourth movie existed there. It was a blissful couple of seconds. Yeah, I've been able to watch 4 Terminator movies in my life. I was too young, and my parents would not have approved of me watching the second movie, and I had not yet been born when the first movie came out, which means that the only way I would be able to watch that in theaters is with a time machine. And I'm working on it. I would love to watch that movie in theaters. Anyway, so yeah, the with that, it certainly, I'm just gonna say World War II and or Vietnam. It reminded people of wars that they'd actually, and then in this, sorry, that was, I just gotta keep an eye on that, because that was my, what's it called? Reflecting thing. So if that thing falls, I have to, yeah, I don't think it's gonna fall. It's been known to be quite capable of remaining there. Right. So yes, in this one, yeah, actually, I guess it is. It does harken to stuff we know about, like current wars in the Middle East. You have this truck, and you have someone hiding on it, and then like blowing up, sneaking up close to military stuff and using like, it's not quite an IED, but yeah, yeah. So but yeah, it's a good way to distinguish it from, because in 1984, the idea of like World War II and Vietnam, that was genuinely horrifying, and today we have a lot more distance. But I mean, there's less than 40 years since the World War II had ended when that movie came out, which literally means like, I mean, I guess there wasn't necessarily a huge amount of people who went and saw it who had actually served in World War II necessarily, but a lot of people had probably heard stuff from their parents or grandparents who had served, and yeah, if, and so for this, it just wouldn't have the same effect. And yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say about that. Yeah. So moving on, you really understand why Kyle trusts John. This is the way they met. He rescued him from a Terminator, which, later on they do point out, honestly, he was probably like following you and waiting for a Terminator to get close to you so that he could make the hero entrance. That they don't go into detail like that, but yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that that's the Sarah points out he's been manipulating you since the moment you met. And Kyle does also later say, I follow him around like a stray dog. So yeah. And Kyle straight up says John is more than a prophet, which is pretty, big. Yeah, not all of the movies lean into the kind of religious overtones, undertones, but it's there in all of them. But that's pretty. Yeah, I mean, he's literally saying, like it's yeah, he is. Yeah, that's yeah. And despite how much Kyle trusts John, he does challenge him on the decision to focus on the camp instead of Skynet's core. And John convinces him by telling him the truth about it. It's a great little, like, John, there's a kind of interesting balance because John some of the time he certainly manipulates Kyle, but then other times he is just what like devastatingly truthful, like that one music teacher person said to Lisa Simpson about telling her that she can't be a jazz musician when she grows up. Just yeah, like he is completely honest except for when he lies. Like that. It's a slight paraphrase of the Scarface quote, which is oddly appropriate because he does have a scarred face. Kyle talks about a future past the war, again, the war against machines, which does mean in a lot of movies he would be dead meat. But yeah, it sets up, I'd go home, I'd rebuild the house, and then, he starts having these, he travels through time and he gets these memories that he's not supposed to have, and it's like, the, what's the saying? Yeah, we see the house that he, yeah, and it's a very, and even if it didn't have, and John's like, I'd like to have a cold beer. If you really, that's big plans. Yeah, just yeah, they're human, and that's really the it's a good thing to have in a movie about this seemingly endless war. To have people that are just like, what, we're gonna end this war, and then we're gonna, have a life past the war, because that's one of the most challenging things for people who deal with war is, what's your life like when you're not in war. I've said it before, but I really do love the relationship between John and Kyle in this movie, and since I went into detail about it elsewhere, I think the old vlog I did this. I'm afraid I don't remember if it was the review vlog or the thoughts vlog, but anyway, because I went into detail, I'm not going to go into detail about it in this particular video. So many people have died fighting this war, and I'm afraid I didn't get the correct, the last part of the quote, so I'm just going to go with more or less what I think I heard. If there was another way, I would have done that. Good foreshadowing of him accepting the transformation, and then him trying to end the conflict in another way. That's something I really do appreciate. This is essentially the first time. No, it is the first time. In all the other movies, the machines, their plan is to basically just, yeah, to kill everyone. And in this, John is like, we don't have to kill everyone. So, if you'll just go willingly, which, I mean, that is something they touched on in the show. But yeah, like I don't think it worked well in the fourth movie to have a character that speaks for Skynet. I do think that it works in this movie, although it's one of many things where this movie, it's like, I feel like I should hate it, but I love it. It works. They made this thing work that I really didn't think they'd ever be able to make work. And we see that Kyle is driving the truck, even though there's a T-800 skeleton in the front seat. And we do see, the eyes are dead, just like at the end of the first movie when the press completely crushes. You see the red go out of the eye. Yeah, you don't see, and then they scan it, and oh, no chip, which is, of course, yeah, that's the only way to stop a T-800 is to completely remove the chip. Or rather, I suppose, given that it doesn't have a chip, there's no way that the skeleton, T-800 skeletons could turn it against Kyle. It excuse me, they might have also removed the power source, but definitely there's no chip, so it can't just be turned into yeah. But he blows up the T-800s, sending them flying, backwards through the lasers, using their own weapons against them. In case you're listening to this and you haven't watched the movie for a while, they're basically they're these lasers, and at first you don't know, are those just like scanning, or are they just like straight up lasers? If you touch them, you're going to be cut. And they turn out to be the latter. They're on either sides of the truck, and right next to them are the T-800s. And when the truck blows up, they get pushed through the. Excuse me, I just gotta make sure that the computer doesn't suddenly. I don't know why it stopped responding, but I'm gonna go with the idea. Oh, there we go. See? I know you had it in you. You may not believe in yourself, but I do. And that was not what was supposed to happen. What the control room is out of control. Okay, I think I got it. Yeah. So the thing is that this computer has a tendency to want to update and reboot, and I don't particularly want it rebooting while I'm trying to read notes off it. And no, I've tried to let it update, it always still wants to update again. So, okay, here we go. It's not. Oh, that's what it is. It's not good now. It's not good. Here we go. Okay, so there. A dozen or more helicopters flying, attacking the work camp. See, this is what I was saying. I think the fourth movie should have ended with a scene like this. Finally we have a truly grand future war scene. I've always said we shouldn't see too much of the future war, but this movie doesn't show that much of it. It just has the biggest future war scene that we've ever seen, but it only has the one scene, so it doesn't. Yeah, and if we are going to see the humans fighting in the future war and winning, yeah, I do think it should be something like that. We already do know that they, we already know that they do take the time machine, and before you say, but in the first movie they also say that, the no wait, do they call it a camp? Oh, what is you doing? What just happened? Did it close it, or did it minimize it? I guess it minimized it. Okay. Oh boy. So a black screen doesn't tend to be good news. Oh, sorry, that's not the right... You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and close the stuff that I don't need anymore so that... Wow. You ever work with a computer so slow that it feels like it's basically saying, let me die? Because I kind of feel like that's what I'm dealing with right now. I think we're there. Okay, and boy, this thing really wants me to learn about Windows 10, and I sure don't care. But I'm not sure it's going to close it. Okay, here we go. There. And go. Now, I love the intercutting. We have John giving a speech, we have the attack, and we have the 1984 T-800 being sent back to 1984. Something I love about this future war scene, and which is really only true of this movie, is that it actually has plot. You know, in the first, again, I love them, they're PTSD flashbacks and world building, because you don't see, you know, almost everything you know about the future world. You know, yeah, in the first one, you've got the 2 flashbacks, and you've got the what Kyle specifically says. That's all we get of what the future war looks like. And then, you know, yeah, you know, in this, there's actually plot. In the second one, I mean, they're there because people expected them to be. I mean, in the commentary track, James Cameron says this is like the last battle, you know. So both the humans and Skynet are just throwing everything at, you know, and it's just, you really didn't need to see it. It doesn't just, yeah. If you want me to talk about that in detail, watch my video, the more recent one on Terminator 2. Anyway, and the third one, they're there because people expected them. And, you know, in the fourth one, honestly, the war doesn't feel that much like what we've seen in the other movies. So I don't really count that as a future war scene. I've said it before, but the recreation of the scenes from the first movie really are incredible. They put a ton of effort into it. And, you know, there are people whining about, you know, there were in 2015, and I watched their videos more recently, so to me it's new. There were people whining back then about it. Why didn't they just use the footage? It was because of rights issues. Look it up instead of complaining. I mean, how could you not think that it's obviously it's because there's some obstacle to them just using the footage? Of course they use most of that footage if they were actually able to. You know, the only new footage would be like the punks and the stuff with the, you know, the direct like fight between the, you know, 1984 army and the pops. Now, I rewatched the first movie just yesterday. It really is uncanny how well they did in recreating the opening. I appreciate that even though it's huge, the future war fight is actually not very long, because at the end of the day, it's just they are capturing the time machine. Kyle talks John into letting him go, or rather, John puts on a show, because of course, you know, of course he's going to send Kyle back. But yeah, you know, I'm saying the movie hasn't completely started. The plot is only just getting going, you know, but it is important to see the future because, and this is again like, yeah, this is the only future war scenes outside of the first movie in the show where they actually matter, where it's not just there because expectations. In this movie, it sets up the relationship between John and Kyle, which is a huge element. The rest of the movie is all about how John is no longer quite the same, and how Kyle, Sarah, and Pops react. None, you know, they don't react the same to seeing John again and to seeing John changed. But yeah, you know, and it gives a lot of development in a very short space of time. You know, we see them in several different situations. And of course, plenty of people volunteered to go back. They believe in John, and you know, and Kyle is like, I died for Sarah Connor. any of these men would die for Sarah Connor. You know, I really do. I love that in the first in the first one they don't really address that, but yeah, of course a lot of people would. You know, I mean, Kyle is the only one who's in love with her. You know, and he's the only one who knows her as well as he does, which you know John made sure of because he knows that Kyle is going to be his father. So yeah, I like the that it points out that of course there were other people who were like, send me, I will, you know, yeah. Think tin foil in a microwave times 10 million, nothing left but a crater. I'm really glad they explained that because that has all, and again, just brief. I'm not going to do that. Don't get used to this, but just briefly, if you don't remember what that's referring to, in this movie, that's why, you know, that's what one of the soldiers in the future war scene says. That's why they can't bring back weapons from the future when they travel through time. You know, so yeah, it's yeah. Anyway, I'm glad they explained that because that has always been a bit of contrived writing. I mean, really, the reason is that James Cameron didn't want them bringing back futuristic weapons because they couldn't do the effects for that throughout the entire movie, and it wasn't the movie he wanted to make. You know, he didn't want Kyle to have very much that was especially useful against the Terminators. The Terminator. Sorry. I'm really glad this points out, of course, Kyle realizes Sarah isn't just going to believe him when he says who he is. I love the extra detail we get. Yeah, right, of the time machine working and such, things that they couldn't afford to put a lot of detail into when they made the first one. But, and yeah, I mean, I guess this is the first time we really see the time machine outside of, let me think. I guess this is the first time we see the time machine in one of the movies, isn't it? Yeah, but yeah, you know, they didn't just make it just a quick flash. No, it really is like a big, yeah. And we see Kyle's memories be replaced, and this is one of those things. I'm really glad they used visual shorthand because we see, you know, okay, these are his original memories, and we recognize them because we've just seen some of them, and there's this sort of I guess it's sort of a rewinding kind of. The visuals get across that the memories that he used to have are being erased and replaced, and the new ones have this kind of golden tint. So we get that this is, you know, in part, this is something new. Hence, you know, it's fresh, golden tint, fresh. It's positive. It's not of the war, and it's, you know, maybe it's golden tinted because the sun is out, and it's like, you know, in these movies, it's always like dark sky in the anyway. Yeah, so it's very nicely done. And yeah, right. And I do think the movie plays well. You know, the first time you see it, you realize these are new memories, and clearly that is still Kyle, because we've seen him as a kid already. We don't know quite what it means to, that these are new. You know, the new memories. Why are there? Why are they there? And what's Genisys? You know, we don't know that yet, but the movie gets to that not too much longer. But it just plants that in your subconscious of, you know, and we also see John attacked. And then, you know, isn't when Kyle sees John in the year 2017, isn't the first thing he says, John, you're alive? Because he thought that John was killed in what he saw, you know, and what he's seeing is John from after that attack. But it's different, yeah. But yeah, it's very clever. We've just seen this Kyle, you know, running around in sewers and like scrounging for food and such. So when we see him in like the 2004, sorry, wait, no, 2000, it is 2017. Yeah, sorry, he is of course running around 2017. You know, yeah, when you see that, you immediately understand this is still, yeah, right. Obviously, both of them are 2017. It's just the first time we see it's 2017, 20 years after Judgment Day, and then the second time it's 2017 in a world where Judgment Day didn't happen before 2017. It'll happen by the end of yeah, later in 2017 than yeah. I had forgotten how well they recreate that horrifying stunt of the poor guy falling directly onto concrete. I mean, obviously they must have faked it for this one. They're not going to ask a guy to do that today, but it does still look really messed up. But yeah, 1984, James Cameron looked a stunt guy directly in the eye and said, "You're going to fall on concrete." I don't know if that literally happened, but that's, yeah, he did. And like, Michael Biehn has said in at least 2 different interviews I've seen that that's the most, like, I forget what word he used to describe, maybe scary or most intense or something, stunt he's ever seen. And like I mean, he clearly, and this is like decades after they made the movie, so it's stuck with him. But he clearly has a ton of respect for that guy, and yeah, and it really, but yeah, in 2015, there's no way they're asking a stuntman to do that. But James Cameron, he also said, we're gonna, let's see, what was it? You're gonna fly a helicopter directly under, was it overpass? Is that what they're called? And we're gonna film it. And then like the camera guys were like, no, we're not gonna film it. And then James Cameron is fine. I'm gonna film it because I know how to run a camera. I don't have, he's filmed stuff before. It's not, but yeah, like the camera guys were like striking and hoping that he wouldn't go through with something as utterly crazy as flying a helicopter right under and over. I mean, it could very easily have gone completely wrong. So it's, yeah, but the but that's James Cameron. Anyway, I should maybe say I absolutely love the Terminator and Aliens, and I mean, I don't think he's made a single bad movie. He hasn't directed a single bad movie. He's written some that maybe aren't, but yeah. So it's not that I have some problem with him, but that's how you get such amazing movies. Stanley Kubrick was also quite, you know, he really pushed the people working for him. So, you know, excuse me. Now, it is too bad that the homeless man saying, "Did you just see a real bright light?" doesn't lead to, the light from the police car. The I mean, it's not. I don't think that it's that the people making this movie didn't get that that was a cute little thing. It's just that they wanted to go to, yeah, it cuts from that back to the Terminator himself, if I recall. And that's also the thing, if, let's see, I really should be able to remember, but now, because I watched it yesterday, but then I watched this one today. Okay, let's see. I think in the first one, it starts with the whole 1984 T-800, and after he has killed the punks, we see Kyle arriving from time travel. But in this, they change up the a little because they didn't want to have the entirety of one of those happen without before the other one. So yeah, it's yeah, in 1984 you could do that kind of thing and just have this entire. I mean, when you think about it, it's not like big action. Yeah, neither of them are big action scenes. They're good scenes, but they're not. The, I don't even is the first one. Is it an action blockbuster or is it more like it's an action movie in part, but it's not quite a blockbuster. The second one is a blockbuster, and from then on. But yeah, in 2015, you can't expect people to sit still through those entire scenes separately, so they intercut them. In addition to messing around with the time travel with T-1000 1984 and Pops also 1984. Now, I forget if I noted this elsewhere, so I'll just briefly say, I, I, I feel like I've seen someone complain, why didn't they take the T-1000 out between 1973 and 1984? And the way I see it, they might well have tried, but they just weren't able to. So what they did was figure, well, Kyle is going to arrive in 1984, along with the T-800. The T-1000 is going to try to kill Kyle and mimic him, and or mimic. Yeah, I mean, when with Kyle dead, he doesn't even need to mimic him. He can just celebrate, I guess. But yeah, he's going to try to kill Kyle because, as we only realized at the very end of the first movie, Kyle was in fact also critical to, he didn't need to survive the entire movie, but he needed to survive enough to, no, I'm not, to impregnate Sarah. I'm gonna accept what Sarah in this says and not use the M word. Excuse me. So the let me think. Yeah, right. So they figure the T-1000 is definitely going to go after Kyle, so we have to make sure after we've stopped the T-800 they sent back, we're going to have to stop. We're going to have to get to Kyle, and they know exactly where the T-800 is going to be at that point in time. It's going to be a lot harder to take him out without getting in trouble, getting seen by a lot of people if they don't take him out immediately. And Kyle is a fighter. He's going to be able to put up a fight against the T-1000. So yeah, that's the order they choose. And yeah, I mean, we got to remember the way they do take out the T-1000 is by luring the T-1000 to where they are. So maybe the T-1000, maybe it didn't used to take the bait. Maybe they didn't, maybe they've stayed in hiding and it's been looking for them and unable to find them. It just prepared, it shows up in the alley with Kyle. It's the first cop that Kyle encounters. So it knew exactly where he would be. So it, it planned on that. It didn't run to assist the T-800. It ran to attack Kyle. Now, and the Terminator theme plays as Pops walks up. And I'm going to be referring to him as Pops. I don't know why they call him Guardian in the end credits, because nobody ever refers to him as that. I mean, Guardian is a name just like Pops is a name, so why not call him Pops? Anyway. It really is a badass fight between the two T-800s. And Pops hits the T-800 with, I don't know what it's called, that thing with like money in it, so quarters come flying out in place of blood, since it's PG-13, similar to how in the first Hellboy, Cronin bleeds sand. But yeah, it's just it's a PG-13, it's not an R, and there's just something visceral to seeing someone, like smacked across the face with something heavy and seeing blood come flying out. If we're watching a movie, almost definitely that's fake blood and they didn't actually get hurt. But it goes into the I don't know if that's where it's put, but the lizard brain and says, ooh, that's impact. If it draws blood, it's really, yeah. Let's see. And Pop's hand gets slightly messed up, which becomes a running thing for the rest of the movie. And Pops gives Sarah the thumbs up. I'm sorry, I can't help it. It makes so much more sense here than in T2. Why is he doing it in T2? I think I already said it in my video on T2, but like my ex-fiance points out, why is he even, is he trying to cheer John up? Because it certainly isn't helping. John's crying, It's just, what is he even, I guess he's saying, like, don't worry, John, even though I'm dead, you'll be okay. It's the corniest thing, and it just works. It's like, we got him. I'm okay, basically, is what he's saying, you don't need to worry about, like, getting me I don't know, a wrench, or, what does a robot need when he's badly hurt? Battery acid transplant. I don't know. And Kyle encounters the T-1000, who immediately reveals he isn't human. You know, he says the date where you come back. Just yeah. And it's it's not like he has any reason to keep it hidden. The T-1000 in this, he doesn't really hide because whenever we see him, he's really close to his targets, so he doesn't need to and I do quite like. I mean, Kyle straight up, he shoots it in a way that like would or should kill. Actually, yeah, he doesn't know what a T-1000 is because it's the first time he's encountered one. So he doesn't. Yeah, he like shoots for the eyes, which we know from the first movie. If you paid attention, that's why he doesn't attack the police station. I'm sorry, just it pisses me off that people watch such an amazing movie and then they're like, watch the movie and pay attention. Like, what's that? I've been watching Sean recently, and I think it's when he's talking about like Stefan Molyneux and his review of Wonder Woman, and he's like, I guess it's very difficult to understand a movie if you don't pay attention and actually listen to the stuff it tells you. Just, it's right there in the movie. Anyway, he shoots for the eyes because he figures that if he can do enough damage, it'll need to repair. But he doesn't know that the T-1000 is just going to regenerate immediately. Now, the T-1000 looking around for Kyle as he finds clothes is genuinely suspenseful, and it's a cool twist on the scene in the first one, which is already suspenseful, but it's like, the level of danger. I mean, part of it is that we've watched the first movie before we watched this, so we already know that he is capable of eluding and evading the cops that look for him. I was trying to think of, is there a third? I can't say erasing, eroding, emailing. No, none of them work. So we know he's not going to be caught. When he actually he deals with the shoes and he stands back up, and we're like, he's so on top of this, he's not. And then the T-1000 like stabs right through and just The T-1000 and Kyle shooting at each other with Kyle from cover is very reminiscent of the Tech Noir club shootout in the first movie. It really doesn't happen anywhere else in the movies, does it? Like, someone behind cover and a Terminator not in cover but shooting at the cover. Yeah. Anyway, it's a really cool idea that if the T-1000 leaves part of himself on a vehicle, he can actually track where it is. You're Sarah. Yeah, I know that. Did you hit your head back there? That's really funny. Like you know, like that legitimately is kind of a stupid thing to say. Like yeah, literally both of you know that that's Sarah. Just yeah, it's a fair question. Did you hit your head back there? Excuse me. I did not kill him. I mean, you can kind of understand why Kyle dislikes Pops. It's not exactly a great introduction. They tried to kill each other. Pop smacks him in the face with a rifle. Just yeah. And also, like, Sarah's like, no, don't. That gun will kill him. And Kyle doesn't say it, but you're sitting in the audience going like, that's the idea. Just at that point, Kyle doesn't know that he shouldn't kill Pops. But it's like, just yeah. Anyway, I really feel like this Sarah is a logical alternative version to the one in the first. She also talked about how frustrating it is to not have a say on what she's going to do in the future. It's just that she now has a lot more knowledge than, yeah, than in the let's see, yeah, in the first movie. And let's see. Oh right, briefly. Yeah, I haven't mentioned the cops at all. O'Brien points a gun directly at Kyle, and then the other cop, like, uses the staff to hit Kyle like in the back or something to knock him down, and then O'Brien is like, I had it under control, and the other guy's like, yeah. The thing you don't do on the first day of the job is what was it? Use lethal force against a suspect that's like and it is like in the what's it called, the abridged script on the editing room for the first movie. They joke that apparently pants theft is punishable by death because the cops have their guns out, and I feel like, I mean, that is a decent enough joke. I feel like the reason they have their guns out is they don't know if he is dangerous, so they're just ready because they are chasing someone. Obviously him stealing pants isn't. It's not gonna. They're not gonna shoot him over that. I would like to think that. Anyway, but the idea is that they don't know if he's also like dangerous. They gotta stop him, and he might have like a knife or something. So they have their guns ready. They don't actually point a gun directly at him until there's a pretty clear indication that he is dangerous. The one shot does go off when Kyle goes directly for that one cop whose gun he does steal, but that's because you know he's going directly for the cop and he grabs his hand. It makes sense that he's you know yeah. Anyway, the if Kyle hadn't been so capable, the cop would have killed him, and it kind of I guess not quite self-defense, but I'm just saying I do think it makes sense. But yeah, in this they kind of pokes at that a little bit. Just, were you really going to shoot a guy who just stole a pair of pants? Is that seriously? Now anyway, yeah. So Sarah, the let's see, yeah, in the first movie she also says that, and just this she's more confident, and yeah, this version of Sarah has a lot more knowledge of what she's going to do in the future, and let's see, and yeah, obviously this Sarah is very different from Terminator 2 Sarah, even though she dresses like her, she's as capable with guns as her and such. However, the that Sarah went through the events of the first movie, and she tried to blow up Cyberdyne and failed, and she's been without her son for I forget if it says specifically, but a while. And she's like terrified that there's a Terminator out there right now who's like, like he may already be dead, and I haven't even heard of it yet. This. And yeah, just this is a Sarah who has had a Terminator protecting her from, what was it, age 9 or something, so 11 years. Yeah, you can understand why she's a lot more casual and calmed down. And just briefly going to say, I do think it makes a lot more sense that a Terminator who's been with Sarah for 11 years has a certain attachment to her than the idea that a Terminator can be turned from a killer robot into, just such a great father in an insane world. It's a still insane choice, Sarah. No, it's still an insane choice. Over the course of what, couple of days or something in the second movie. Anyway, let's see. And Sarah refers to Kyle as Reese, like she does in the first movie before the love scene. And I tried to notice if, I don't think she does call him Kyle at any point in this. Does she? I'm sorry, the movie just moves so fast, I didn't quite figure. But, only really at the very end is she also in love with him. So, I'll definitely rant. This Kyle Reese is much less PTSD and intense and such. But, excuse me, I don't think that, I don't think audiences, again, 2015, would respond well to that. So I forgive that change, unlike how I don't forgive that the second Terminator movie was made so that 10-year-olds could watch it when the first movie would give 10-year-olds nightmares. but yeah, just it's I have almost nothing negative to say about the first movie. The one thing is that when he deals with the eye, when the rubber face moves, it's not completely convincing. Yeah, it's not convincing. Anyway, so I'm not, but yeah, in that movie, we accept that Kyle Reese is just, constantly really PTSD, and I'm not sure 2015 audiences would have accepted that. Same for Sarah. In 1991, we were okay with Sarah Connor being all PTSD, and I'm not sure that. And you could make the argument then why, deal with those characters if you're going to do them so differently. And I feel like it's close enough. I mean, if you watch very closely, and this is something I think the IMDb fact also points this out, there are details that are very different from the let's see, yeah, details were given in the first movie are different from details in this movie, even before we see any time traveling. So these might be subtle hints that this is not quite the same timeline. This is not the exact same thing. In this movie, John saves Kyle as a child from a Terminator, where in the first movie, Kyle specifically explains that John freed him from a camp. That was the first time they met. So yeah, I feel like this movie does a really great job of having a ton of action, but not overpowering the audience with it. I would say that by the end of the fourth movie, the action does get to be overpowering, or is overpowering by that point. And that never really happens with this. Does get to be, or is overpowering there at the end. Whatever. That never really happens with this one. I've seen people who say that there's too much action. I disagree. The way I see it, with this movie, it's somewhat like the Captain America: The Winter Soldier and Captain America: Civil War. My brain is fried. Sorry. They move really really fast, and there's a lot of plot, but there's also a ton of action. So it never. Yeah, this is not as good as those two movies, but you know, just yeah, not everything can be that amazing. I will completely rant that the only reason that the T-800 melts down to a skeleton from just one explosion like that is that they wanted that visual. I like that, there's that one drop of acid that, gets on her and then she sprays it. We don't know exactly what's going on with that, but we will understand in a couple of minutes. And let's see. There are types of acid, or at least types of chemicals, that can burn through metal, and there are other chemicals that can, I don't know if the word is neutralize, but like neutralize the effects, which, yeah, that's what she sprays on her arm. Yeah, it's a very clever idea. It's exactly the way you would want to deal with a killer robot. Is melt it like that. Now, they really are incredibly fortunate that the T-800 didn't end up under the acid. That would really have screwed them up badly. But then, the T-1000, they're not. Yeah, things don't go exactly as they'd hoped with that in general. It does make a ton of sense that the T-800 chip is capable of running the time machine, is an incredibly smart computer. I think I saw someone's, maybe it was the editing rich script, like, criticize that, and just like, why, I don't understand why, so it can run a robot, but it can't control, like, I mean, yeah, I don't know, I don't think that it's that, like, whatever. And do also keep in mind, I'm not sure, they don't really say that they can't, that it's the chip by itself. They just say that they can't make it work without a T-800 chip. That doesn't mean that the T-800 chip is doing it by itself. It means that it might be working in conjunction with a bunch of other things that, like, yeah, which is, that's something that people, today people might combine several. I heard about like Xboxes maybe, and yeah. So anyway, let's see. Can you stop him talking like that? Is there a switch or something? Alois is currently saying what the audience is thinking. I mean, they had to do both. They had to have some kind of jargon and I mean it's essentially gibberish about time travel, and for another character to point out nobody knows what that means. I just realized I forgot to turn on one of the lights for the lighting, but yeah, I guess it's okay. The yeah. Let's see. And badass Sarah demanding the chip back. Of course, she doesn't trust Kyle. She has no reason to yet. You can do this. Straight line, you just go and you don't look back. And that convinces her, and we later find out why. That's, literally no one. The only way that he could know that is if there is really some kind of, like, nobody knows that but her, Pops, and her deceased father. So the only way that Kyle could know is if in some kind of the other timeline kind of thing, she trusted Kyle with it, or Pops told, so yeah. And, the reason that he knows it is because she did say it, and later in the movie we see she does say it to Kyle in the police station. Now, after that, I of course follow him around like a stray dog. I really appreciate his self-awareness there. Look, I know I'm not what you expected, but I promise you I will do everything I can to keep you safe, even if it kills me. And it's like, that's really sweet, but to her it's also like, oh, he is going to end up dying. Anyway, that's the kind of man your son was. Will be. Jesus, time travel makes my head hurt. Again, saying what the audience is thinking. Can you just not say the word mate to me, like, ever? I really find their father-daughter relationship very convincing and charming. This is the first time that I completely believe in one of the movies that a killer robot has a genuine, like, emotional relationship with a human being. I bought it on the show, and I buy it in this movie, but I don't buy it in any of the other movies so far. And Kyle and Sarah, they stand in the time machine, naked, facing each other, to quote the pitch meeting, because that's how people do sex. What will it be like? You mean if it doesn't kill us both? I mean, I guess there is some chance it'll kill them both. This is a time machine built out of parts from 1984. He doesn't believe it'll work. She does, because Pops did it, and Pops doesn't make mistakes about things like that. Really cool how the time travel bubble burns away part of one car, and pretty ridiculous they're so fine after the car hits them. And now Pops says, "Bite me." I quite like the detail here that not only did Pops pick up on something someone else said, which, that happens throughout the first two movies as well. The Terminators. Actually, I'm not. Does the T-1000 ever? Anyway, the T-800s are shown to pick up on things other people say and use them. And yeah, it's the third one. Sorry, it's just crap in the third one. Anyway, he's actually using something that he called immature. He's using something Sarah taught him. So even though he may, at first have been like, that's really immature, he does like it because it's from her. He's maybe not going to tell her that he likes it, because then she's not going to stop saying it. But it's a parent-child thing. You don't tell the kid if you're, yeah. And we're told how Sarah first heard the "it's a straight line" thing. In the flashback to 1973, Pops is wearing the sunglasses that the T-800 did for you know, in the first movie, after the eye gets damaged, you know, from the police station onwards, for example. And Kyle doesn't trust Pops, but Sarah does. And 33-year-old later, O'Brien is convinced this is time travel. And they talk about how this calories is supposed to be 12. Something's going to happen on the show with the, you know, fingerprints. And see, on the show, it was like, but these fingerprints actually fit a 4-year-old. And I'm like, why do you have the fingerprints of a 4-year-old? But in this, they do actually say, you know, he got in a fight, and the kid and the parents were like, we're going to scare him straight. So they took him to the police station. They had him, like, you know, fingerprinted and put him in a cell. And then he started directing suspense movies and became quite renowned for his contributions to visual film like films like Hitchcock. And yes, so moving on. Who had that happen to him? And cons are fake getting into an argument, the trope. I think I do talk about that in the other video, but I forget if I point out that it's kind of a trope. Excuse me. And Sarah has some trouble accepting help from Kyle. And Kyle points out, you know, just because I helped you with this doesn't mean that I think you're like helpless or something. It's very surreal to hear John saying hi mom when, like, I'm not 100%. Yeah, I guess he is older. Yeah, he must be older than Sarah is at this. Yeah, sorry, because this is, let's see, Sarah was like 9 in 73, so she's 20 now, and this is John from 2027. No, sorry, 2029, I guess. And anyway, late in, yeah, and he was born in 80. Sorry, sorry, 85. Yeah, so he must be like 40, I guess. And Pops hides a big gun inside a giant teddy bear. I mean, he's going into a hospital. If anybody asks, he's visiting a kid who's related to him. Who's gonna take away a teddy bear from a sick kid? You know, just like it's. I don't know. I gotta check the teddy bear for it. And Pops could. I mean, he wouldn't be able to do it, but the cop would probably think if I tell him that, he's gonna look me straight in the eye and say, "You are gonna crush my nephew's heart if you take away this teddy bear. You know, he's in there, he's been here for so long, he doesn't know when he's going to get to leave. I'm bringing him a teddy bear, and you're not going to stop me." And John convinces both Kyle and Sarah that he really is John. I really appreciate that that's there, that it's not just like, no, it's like a T-1000 thing that can mimic John. No, this is John. Now, yeah, someone who's a child in 1973, an adult in 1984, and a girl very likely does enjoy Elton John. But is that a reference to the third movie where Arnold put on Elton John sunglasses? I mean, they could have picked another singer that was popular. I guess David Bowie might have been a little too, excuse me, considering his appearance in Labyrinth, I want to say it is. Which is, I haven't watched that movie, so I'm not going to speak to the quality of it, but, you know, it does appear that it has kind of hints towards sexuality and burgeoning sexuality. So John saying that to his mother, and his mother singing David Bowie to, that might have been a little creepy. And John calls Kyle dad and realizes Sarah hasn't told Kyle yet. I mean, now that he thinks he can call him dad, of course he would. Obviously, he's not going to do it before the time travel, but he does assume that Sarah told him. And this is like, he even says, "I've been waiting my whole life to get to do this." You know, he never thought he would be able to do it. He always thought that by the time, you know, I mean, yeah, really, Kyle in the original movie never does find out that he's John's father. So yeah, he doesn't expect Kyle to live long enough for him to meet him in the future, the Kyle that went to 1984, and he's not expecting to catch up to them either. So yeah, I will admit the scene of Pops shooting John would have been more impactful if the trailers hadn't told us that John was the Terminator, but I do stand by that I'm glad the trailers told us that overall. And Sarah pulls a gun on Pops and tells him to let go of Kyle. So now she does somewhat believe that Pops is evil. That's basically the one thing, if Pops shoots John and yeah, and the pile of blood John was lying in turns into nanobots and goes back into the rest of his body. And his face scar heals. And we see the Matt Smith Terminator walking past all the soldiers that he killed, and you see smoke coming off some of them, presumably plasma burns. And the fights between Pops and John are great. I guess there's really only the two. The one in the hospital, and then the one at the very end in... Is it called Cyberdyne? I'm not entirely sure. Now, let's see. And great idea that the magnetic thing attracts Pops, but also John. And that kind of thing is the only thing they have to fight John with. Where in the second movie, basically all it took was shooting him a bunch, but then that doesn't even work all that well, so it somehow manages to fail, both to make him invincible and to give them some kind of hope of defeating him. Moving on. Moving on from the second movie. Kyle has a hard time accepting that they can't turn John back into a human being. Sarah and Pops have accepted that he isn't... they haven't spent their whole lives following and trusting John like Kyle has. Makes a lot of sense that... the first time John and Kyle were in the same place, John saves Kyle's life. Meanwhile, the first time Sarah encountered Terminators, including a Terminator that could shapeshift, the shapeshifting one killed her family. So when she sees that John can do that sort of thing, she doesn't trust him. What do we want? Time travel. When do we want it? It's irrelevant. That's a cute, yeah. I like the child that represents Genisys to the audience. Sorry, that represents Genisys to the audience. The way he talks and what he says is creepy, but because we know what's going on. But to the characters in the movie who don't know what's going on yet, it's not creepy enough that they can immediately tell they're evil. There are some movies where you have a creepy child and the audience don't trust him, and the other characters are like, oh, you seem perfectly fine, I'll turn my back on you with sharp instruments near you, yeah. In this, the whole thing, it's also like, like Resident Evil, like if you encountered the Red Queen and you didn't, I mean, it is kind of creepy from right away, even if you don't. Anyway, if you, the viewer, heard her talk and heard what she says before you knew that, before you know very much about her, by the time you meet her in the movie, the audience already doesn't trust the Red Queen. But yeah, if you heard it, you'd still be like, that's creepy. Now, despite how hard it is for... Okay, yeah, Pops, right, despite how hard it is for him to maybe show, Pops does clearly really care about Sarah, hence the pictures of her as a child in, this place of, he's been there waiting for them for years, and he would look at the pictures pictures. So yeah, I appreciate the bonding between Sarah and Kyle based on neither of them having choices about what happens, and Sarah's genuinely scared to fall in love with him, and Kyle still doesn't want to accept that John is lost. I really like John's version of Kyle's line in the first about, absolutely will not stop. Again, it's like, honestly, I should probably hate that because I love the original, and I don't tend to like when you change things like that. Yeah, rule this. If you're really Pops, prove it. As a T-800, I lack the mimetic capabilities. It's him. Let's go. Or sorry, it's him. Go. Theoretically, I hate it when he says that. And John removes the brakes. Very logical and tactical. John, he just wants to stop them, even in, whether or not that involves killing them. And him removing the brakes means that the bus is not going to keep moving for very much longer. If they had gone off the bridge, that would basically have been fine for him. He just wants, if he, let's hypothetically say that he would have gone with them into the water, that still wouldn't have been like a problem as far as we know. We don't know. I guess there's some chance he responds to water like Sandman does in Spider-Man 3. Anyway, let's see. And the after the bus crash, when Pops like scans around and it's like, I can't be sure that I'd be able to stop them all before they badly hurt you. So okay, we gotta just we gotta go with them. The let's see. Yeah, John made the same judgment. You know, he wasn't on the bus when it fell over, did it? Was he? I guess there's some chance he was. Anyway, if not, yeah, like he landed and then he saw like there's like 12 cops on them. We gotta just, I'll catch up to them, but I can't, you know, it's probably, yeah, let's hypothetically say that, yeah, I mean, he can either kill the cops to get a good shot at attacking Pops, or he can attack Pops directly, and the police will try to stop both of them and slowing him down, and I was about to say John, Kyle, and Sarah can then get in a car and leave. So, yeah. I really love the entire bus sequence, but I do wish that the trailers hadn't given away that the main characters do make it out. I feel like it should have shown that it starts to hang off, but not them making it. Yeah. I mean, at the same time, I get they don't want people to feel cheated or tricked when they see that they do make it. When you show something like that in a movie trailer, maybe sort of should be the time where it actually kills that person or something. Now, you just go and you don't look back. Got it? Yeah. Do you GOT it? Yeah. Get it? Like, for show? I really do not get people who say that they didn't find the bus scene and the helicopter scene exciting and suspenseful. I agree that some of the CG, excuse me, is obvious in the physics and such, but I thought they were amazing. Great shots, Sarah. I will acknowledge that this movie does play fast and loose with physics, which really the first two did not do. And I guess even the third movie didn't especially do that. The fourth did, and I'm of course referring mainly to action scenes in these movies. And John imitates Doug to make sure security people do not show up. What about John? I think he's doing just fine. Very creepy when the huge monitor sort of cuts out and then the hologram shows up. You're not a child. I know what you are, and I know what you're going to do. Yeah, Sarah Connor says that, and the audience goes wild. I say it to my nephew, and suddenly I've ruined his 5th birthday party. I'm joking, obviously. It was his 6th. Again, I'm joking. I'm never doing something like that. great reveal that John is right by Sarah. We thought it was just holograms near him. Yeah, and let's see. Yeah, Sarah is like yelling for Pops to press the detonator button, and John says he can't. Neither can I, because if you die, he definitely pushes that button. Or he definitely hits that button, something like that. Yeah, again, another excellent fight between John and Pops. And the detonator's destroyed. Not a bad twist to the otherwise fairly similar to Terminator 2 current setup to the scene. And then, yeah, they decide that they gotta make the twisty, spinny thing blow up instead, and that'll blow up the dynamite. Whatever. You know what I'm talking about. You have a plan, right? Theoretically. And Genisys locks Kyle and Sarah in a room, and Pops uses that giant cutting thing, but it doesn't do much other than slow down John. It's again like it seems like it may be, yeah, like you'd hope that it had more of an effect, but yeah, it doesn't, because the nanobots he very quickly regenerates. See, that's one of the things in this movie. John with the nanobots is never like embarrassed and humiliated, where in T2 that happens to the T1000 a bunch of times. Like every time he comes close to doing any damage, he gets shot in the head, or like his arms get shot partially off, and he's just a putz, like nothing, just now. This final bit of the fight between John and Pops is an excellent upgrade to the one between the two. Between the T-800 and the T-1000 in Terminator 2, where the T-1000 also suddenly turns between, like, in this one he's going behind and in front of. In T2, he gets pushed up against, and then he morphs to be facing the other direction. And Sarah doesn't want Pops to be inside the generator, but he tells her there's no other way to stop John in time to stop Genisys. Kyle Reese, protect my Sarah. Excellent climax. It has a lot of fighting, goes really big before culminating in a huge explosion, and it does have a fight between an evil Terminator and someone defending one or both of the Connors, but it's also much bigger than any one-on-one fight. And you see Pops sink into the T-1000 liquid. I had forgotten about this, but yeah, that is a dog barking in a Terminator movie, and it's not reacting to a Terminator. I mean, Pop's standing pretty far away. It must have been barking because of Sarah, who is very much not a Terminator. And Pop says that Kyle Reese is a good man, and Sarah says he is. Sarah and Kyle kiss, and Pops is right there looking, and he tries to smile. It really does suck that there's not going to be a movie following this one. They're going to ignore this in future Terminator movies, is what I'm saying. And I realize there's going to be more Terminator movies than this one. And the Terminator theme plays over part of the ending credits. Excellent. So, yeah, if Sarah ever did start calling Kyle instead of Reese, then I missed it. And I mean, they don't quite fall in love with it. I guess by the very end, she is in love with him as he is with her. Let's see. But yeah, in the first movie, they are in love before the end. Yeah. Doesn't bother me personally, but I can understand the perspective that says that a rap song should never play over the end credits of a Terminator movie. Okay, so that's that section, and as usual, that's a really long section. Okay, so let's see. yeah, I guess I'm gonna go ahead. Okay, so second section is called Notes Taken Before Watching. Excuse me. Now, let's see, I noted, once the Terminator starts threatening the good guys, does a long time pass in the movie without at least one Terminator threatening the good guys? There's 40 minutes in the second movie, 12 minutes in the third. Second and fourth doesn't have a Terminator character, and the first one never has very long pass without the Terminator in a scene, and if he isn't directly threatening Sarah and Kyle, he is looking, he's doing something that'll enable him to zoom, doing self-repairs, or what's it called? Uh, Self-repair, or looking for where they are. I didn't make exact notes, but no, I'm almost certain there's never a long time that passes without, great threats to the main characters. In response to what I saw a lot of critics say, how is this safe for Hollywood? It deletes the first two movies from the timeline, or at least those are not the timeline we're watching. How is it safe? It makes no sense to me. I mean, if anything, it's the exact opposite, because it's literally saying, you're no longer watching those movies. Just, yeah. Now, others say the plot is confusing, and yeah, I don't really. Okay, so just briefly go through. Kyle goes to 1984, but it's a version where a reprogrammed T-800 has been sent to 1973, which is the it's the first time one of the movies has had someone sent back to before others. So far it's always been after others. So it's a different timeline, and then they debate which judgment day they have to stop, and Kyle knows it's 2017. His memories tell him so. That's why excuse me. And those memories were filled in from him traveling, because his childhood is now different. And this is because the time travel, which was again to 1984, 2027, had it quote unquote already happened. It's a loop, just like the first movie. How could John Connor exist if Kyle hadn't always or already traveled back? Yeah, I don't really see the confusion. Now, there are some people who say that the acting is bad. I don't really agree. Some say the dialogue is bad. I mean, I guess maybe some of it, but I don't think it's very much, and I don't think it's enough that it's a problem. Now, Brad Jones said that Carl Urban would be a better Kyle Reese, and that John Courtney is miscast as Kyle Reese. I mean, yeah, Urban would be a better, but I don't think that it's a big problem that it's John Courtney playing the role. I do think that let's see, what's the word? The writing for Kyle is very different than the first one, and the show. Now, let's see. Others say that the action is too over the top, reminds them of Michael Bay. Yeah, that is true. It's very much it's more Michael Bay action. Just make sure I write that down. It's more Michael Bay action than it's Terminator 1 and 2 action. make sure to note that for the sixth movie. Now, the Metacritic user review by Shadyak 1985 does bring up a few points of criticism about the movie, but a lot of his review has got to be trolling because he gets incredibly basic things about the first two movies completely wrong and seems determined to not understand how things work in this movie. I have to admit, it's pretty decent trolling. I can respect that. Now, all of the movies use time travel as a plot device, but this is the first one that has fun with it, which really is, like, the first one is, of course, not trying to have fun with it. It has a cool core concept, but it doesn't, it's a dark, gritty, scary movie. It's not trying to have fun with it, but none of the sequels before this one actually had fun with it, which is absolutely, it just, I mean, the time travel in the first movie is already ridiculous. You have the, let's see, it's the thing of how can Kyle Reese be John's father if Kyle Reese, yeah, it's basically, it's a causality loop, I think is the term. You have to, excuse me, if John doesn't exist, excuse me, without Kyle traveling back in time, then how could John exist to teach Kyle to fight, to rescue him in the future? It's that thing. So it's pretty ridiculous. It took them this long to get to this. But if this movie had been made just, I don't know, 5 or 6 years earlier, then the effects wouldn't have been anywhere near as great. I realize turning John Connor into a villain can really alienate a lot of fans, and I would call it an interesting risky twist, similar to erasing the events of the first two movies. But let's be honest here. Outside of the TV show, which this is not set in the same continuity as, or rather, if it were, it would have been erased or be put, or be put in an alternate timeline to the events of this movie. Outside of this TV show, John Connor is just not that compelling of a character. He is anti-robot Jesus, and that's basically it. He's interesting as a concept, but not as a character. He's incredibly obnoxious in the 3 Terminator movies that he's actually in on screen. I don't care how much you want to argue in favor of it making sense for him to be obnoxious. If you make the savior of the entire world a major character in the movie, and you make the audience hate his guts, you're screwed up. And I find him so much more appealing that, like, I wouldn't fight to save John Connor's life if he behaves the way he does in movies 2, 3, and 4. But I would definitely fight to stop the John in this. The Metacritic user review of Alexander Pankov is fascinating to try to decipher. It sounds like he wrote it in Russian and Google translated it directly into English. There are even words that it didn't know what to translate them into. I don't know, maybe it is like Botnik or something. Now, yeah, about like 30 minutes? I'm not 100% sure. I forgot to note. Anyway, maybe 30 minutes or so passed before Kyle travels through time. I can see why that's maybe a long time, since we already know from trailers that it'll be alternate 1984, not regular 1984. It's not like we expect. If you watch the trailer, you don't expect 1984 to play out similarly to the first movie. And it's an hour in or so that we see John is changed, which was also given away in the trailer. Maybe these things should happen sooner, but the marketing department disagreed with the editor or something like that. So yeah, but it is the let's see. I don't know. I get it. I get the idea of not revealing these twists, but You know, there's that one trailer where people are freaking out, like, James Cameron says you won't believe the twist, and then it shows the twist. Presumably, James Cameron did not know that the trailer was going to show the twist. Because the way he's saying it, it seems like he didn't know. Like, do you get this excited about everything? Because I have to imagine you have extremely high blood pressure then. Because it really is ridiculous how much people freaked out about the twists being revealed and James Cameron saying the twist is amazing and then the trailer going on to show the twist. Just seriously, that is just, excuse me, banana balls is what that is. The thing is, if you don't give away those two twists, if the trailers, like there's that thing of, like Kevin Feige said, and it proved to be largely true, I'm not going to spoil it. He said of Endgame that the trailers, I'm not going to spoil Endgame here, don't worry. The trailers for Endgame only feature footage from the first 15 minutes. You know, that, yeah, yeah, I can understand people say, like, you know, oh, it should only show stuff from before the time travel in the trailer for this. But then what's the point? Like, I really do feel like a Terminator movie has to advertise the fact that there's something new. You know, the first one, it was the first one, so there's nothing to change. The second one, we know from the trailers that there's a reprogrammed Terminator now. The third one doesn't really have anything new, which is one of the problems with it. And the fourth one is set entirely in 2018, the future war, and then this has these couple of twists. If you didn't show these couple of twists, it would seem like it was just, well, we're doing the first movie again, but now we see some more future war stuff before the time travel. I think there's a lot of people who would not have gone to see. I guess there's some chance that, like, people hate watched for, apparently, like, a lot of people did dislike the twist of John turning out to be evil, which, I mean, if you don't do that, what are you going to do? Anyway, now, right, so moving on, so I rewatched both trailers, and just, yeah, I still love both of these trailers. I don't care what people say, I love them. Now, let's see. Right, so there's some special features on the Blu-ray. So this is, excuse me, Family Dynamics is what this one called. So the yeah, it's on in the special feature they talk about all the different nationalities represented, and yeah, the moment that you hear them talk in their real accents and dialects, just yeah, this was the first time I heard a lot of these people talk out of character, so it's very strange to hear. Yeah. And yeah, they talk about Arnie being back and his reaction to that. And yeah, just briefly, yeah, Arnie talks about, in the first one, he barely had to strip, it was the first time he was in a movie where he didn't have to get naked very much and flex his muscles and such, and it was his first villain role. And then he says it was kind of a heroic villain. I don't know if he's like accidentally jumping to the second entry or maybe he's getting obsolete. Does he not know what the word means? Anyway. And yeah, they talk about Emilia Clarke. They don't mention that she looks so much like Linda Hamilton. I mean, yes, she's an incredible actor and a badass, and that's necessary too. However, with that pick, they got the look just right. And why this Calories looks, sounds, behaves nothing like Michael Biehn, why Simmons joined this, and what he brought to this, how good Jason is, the character of John, And Lee, who plays the T-1000, who actually had the nickname Terminator as a teenager. Smith, wait, who? And yes, that was a joke. Let's see. Right, and yeah, they talk about that Jai Courtney is not very similar to Michael Biehn, and he says he watched the first two movies for reference, but didn't try to emulate him. So I do think, yeah, it makes a lot of, yeah, he wasn't trying, and considering how awkward it came across in the fourth movie, with a real attempt to emulate him, yeah. Anyway, Jason Clarke can be incredibly charismatic as well as incredibly scary, so you can have a row. Now, let's see. And then there's one called Infiltration and Termination. And let's see. They actually did flip that truck in the future war scene. Now, they go into the concept and design. I thought it was going to say detail. Yeah. A time machine, the two use. And yeah. And right, and then there's the one called Upgrades, VFX of Terminator Genisys. And yeah, they talk about the spider tank and how it was insanely difficult to do in 1984 Arnold. Talk about T-3000, including nanotechnology. Now, let's see. So I'm gonna go into other videos and such. I rewatched the midnight screenings episode they did on the movie. It was enjoyable off view. I don't think I had anything that I really wanted to add to. I do really agree with Brad on the first one being the best and being scary. And that it would be more interesting to have more movies, excuse me, that were like the first. Now, right. So, yeah, I guess I'm just, this next section I'm not sure is going to be particularly long, but I'll make it a separate section. So, John Connor in this, and I refer to him as that rather than T-5000 because I'm not sure how many people think of, I don't myself either, think of the movie and think, oh right, John's a T-5000, you know. The T-3000 is the one who, you know, like, who grabs him in the future war, and John for the rest of the movie is what is referred to as a T-5000, but, excuse me, yeah, you know, if you don't have those numbers right in front of you, liable to forget, and it's not. That's not your fault. Anyway, I think it's a very interesting twist to turn him into a villain, and I think the nanobots thing is very interesting. There's a yeah, what's the term? It's keeping up with new tech stuff, and it works well as a, yeah. I think I read someone say that the idea of, when this movie came out, it would have made more sense if the characters figured that there were like infinite different timelines, but how do you make a Terminator movie with something like that, though? Excuse me. So, let's see. Yeah, final section. IMDb, Wikipedia, and critics sites. Excuse me. Terminator Genisys absolutely will not stop, even when it probably should. I don't necessarily agree, but that's clever. I can appreciate clever. Terminator Genisys is a bridge to the future in that it captures the feel, not the greatness, of T1 or T2, while laying the groundwork for a full departure from the old mythology in forthcoming installments. Very well put. I think that is, yeah, the there we go. And in addition to mythology, I think there's also some chance that it would have been a very different story structure. You know, the time travel thing might have been dropped for some kind of, yeah. Now, to watch Genisys is to see the franchise become a figurative embodiment of the Terminators themselves. Convinced of its own superior vision of the future, it tramples upon the dusty skeletons of the forefathers it slaughtered to achieve it. Cute. It feels less like a taut feature film and more like the series finale of a long-running TV show. It's all reference and parody and fan service. I do see what he means by that, definitely. Or Whitney, I guess she means by that. Now, let's see. Now, let's see. This one guy says, first 30 minutes are great, then meh. I definitely do understand. It definitely does become a very different movie. Yes, there are people saying, if you like the first two movies, this movie is an insult. And some people say, shouldn't have recast the T1000. Robert Patrick has said that he feels that it was so basically so perfect in the second movie, so that if you know, he appeared in more, then it would only take away from that. Some of the O'Brien's lines were improvised by J.K. Simmons, including the thing with, you know, take a door clean off. That was the written line. You know, for people who can't do that themselves, that was something J.K. added. Now, the original director of The Terminator, James Cameron, asked Scott to officially endorse this film. He says he loved this so much he personally considers this the official third film of the franchise, but in 2017, Cameron admitted that he supported this film only because of his friendship with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is kind of nice. I don't know if, you know, it's probably lost a lot of credibility due to that. And apparently Christian Bale was unavailable to reprise his role as John Connor from Salvation. I had figured they just recast him. Right. Emilia Clarke loved the script for this film because this was based on what James Cameron created with his Terminator movies, but the new backstory allowed the cast to put a whole new spin on the characters and even reinvent them. Exactly. See, someone gets it, at least. Now, this says that Tim Miller accepted the offer to direct Terminator Dark Fate, passing on the chance to make Deadpool 2. That's why he didn't do Deadpool 2? I heard there were disagreements, and people said Ryan Reynolds got him fired because he didn't want 2 to be as similar to 1 as it is. He wanted Deadpool 2 to be a very different movie than Deadpool 1. I don't know. I mean, I could, yeah. This is one of the few films in the series that does not mention the term cybernetic organism in reference to the Terminators. Instead, the protagonists mainly refer to them as cyborgs. The J.K. Simmons in part accepted the role because his like 12-year-old daughter, at the time she was 12, she was like a big fan of Jai Courtney, and Jai Courtney found out about that, and he taped a special birthday message for her like 13th birthday, I want to say. That's very sweet. You know, no matter what you might think of him as an actor, you gotta admit that is very very sweet of him. Yeah, Schwarzenegger was impressed with Emilia Clarke's performance as Sarah Connor and admired her for doing a terrific job with the role, which is also very sweet. There's a lot of sweet in the, yeah. Jewel State was not offered or considered for the role of Sarah Connor. Then why are you telling us this? Like, the producers did not consider inventing a real-time machine, time traveling back, getting Albert Einstein, to, you know, get him back to be able to work on the time travel aspects of this movie as a producer. Well, no, of course not. Just like, why are we being told what is anyway? Yeah, I acknowledge that the that entry doesn't only say that, but from reading the rest of the entry, I still don't understand why we're being told. Now, let's see. Right, so this, yeah, I think this is a goof, a plot hole goof. Kyle and Sarah have a time machine, travel to any day they want, and have 33 years since the birth of Skynet. Yet for some reason they choose to get to the time when Skynet will rise within a few days instead of giving themselves some more time for preparation. I think the idea is that then they also have very little time during which they can be stopped. The longer time between their arrival for the time machine and when they are able to stop Skynet, the greater the chance that maybe a Terminator would be sent back to intercept them. Yeah, sorry, because it's only after they travel that they realize John is there. So they figure a Terminator is going to be sent, a Terminator will be sent back. Guess what happened? A Terminator will be sent back. It just had, it was John, but yeah. And and in fact, in the movie, John as the Terminator does intercept them. Imagine if they had to fight him for many, many more years instead of just a few days, as it is in the movie. Think about how difficult a time they have in the movie getting to Genisys in time. Imagine if John had much more time. By the end of the movie, he's basically destroyed Pops. Imagine if they had a week, Pops wouldn't last more than a few days, and then they wouldn't have a chance against John. I realize that that's like saying, well, okay, so it works because the writers knew that it would work out like that. Well, the reason they figured that was because the less time between the better, the better chance of, they also didn't expect, like, John didn't know exactly what they were planning until they told him. They didn't expect the Terminator to know, so they had a better chance if he hadn't known. Now, let's see. Right, and yeah, I think this is also a goof plot hole. History has changed concerning the future war. Kyle, Sarah, and the Guardian, let's see, are now stuck in 2017. No way to return to 1984, so John Connor can be conceived. Also, there are now two Kyle Reeses. Maybe these will be addressed in the next movie. But the idea is to remove the need for a future war leader, John Connor. The idea is to completely prevent Skynet in the future war. I'm not sure how there being two Kyle Reeses is a problem. I don't know if they mean that there could be problems because they have the same identity, but that's just an issue of changing identity, something we seem to do many times on the show and several times in the movies. Anyway, this is not a Back to the Future rules where it's dangerous to interact with another version of yourself. And I was wondering if that maybe something was said in the movie about how there's not allowed to be more than one person in a certain time, but nothing like that is, I mean, this is not, they're not just trying to stay alive and, make sure that John gets born. They're trying to stop the war. That's why they're blowing up, Skynet. In the first movie, they're not trying to prevent the future war. They're just trying to make sure that Sarah survives. That they stop the evil Terminator and that Sarah survives. That's it. And because that goes like that, it's, we at the end realize it's a loop. The whole thing is a loop. But with the sequels, it's always, oh, we gotta try to prevent the future war entirely. So it doesn't matter that oh, but John hasn't been born. Well, if Judgment Day hasn't happened yet, then it doesn't really matter if he hasn't. And yeah, then there's the Terminator Salvation. Kyle Reese was a teenager in 2018. And in 2017, Kyle is like 12. Terminator Salvation is not in the same continuity as this movie. If it was, then where's Kate Brewster in the future war scenes? She's not even referenced at all, even though supposedly her children with John will be important in the Terminator Salvation continuity. Terminator 3 also happened, and in the Terminator Salvation continuity, Terminator 3 also happened, but in that, the date for Judgment Day is not 97, but instead 2004. And here they don't mention the idea of Judgment Day being 2004 when they're about to travel through time. Let's see. They only mention 97. Right, yeah, there's this thing about without Sarah and Kyle, the Terminator Guardian, doing anything between 84 and 2017, somehow Judgment Day was delayed another 10 years. It's clear in Terminator 2 that the reason Judgment Day happened in 97 was that Cyberdyne was able to create Skynet, through the discovery of the Terminator armored chip at the end of Terminator 1. The 1984 events, since that armored chip were completely destroyed in 1984. Oh, wait, sorry. Yeah, delayed Skynet Judgment Day. Let's see. Yeah, and then next time pay more attention if you're gonna ask why it's 2017 instead of 97. It's 20 years delay, not 10 years, but whatever. Clearly, Skynet deemed it more effective to use the technology of 2017, since where previous versions of Skynet are said to be hooked into everything. They most definitely do not directly control devices that our regular people have, which would make it easier to target them. Just track their smartphone, iPad, and get all the information you want about them to make it easier. Make sure that you caught everyone you're looking for, which is just to make sure, which is a thing with 2017 technology. Yeah, yeah. I, I think that ended up slightly confusing, but basically you know, the reason that Skynet was there in 95 was because in 94 there was an arm and a broken chip. In the continuity of this movie, there isn't. They were melted. The we see the body being melted. We're not told that the chip was melted, but it stands to reason. Pops isn't gonna just leave it around. And the reason that the in the third movie they say that Judgment Day was delayed from 97 to 2003 or 4 or something like that. But that's based on there being an arm in 95 because of the events of the second movie, the arm that gets ripped off. So that also didn't happen. And let's see. And the third, maybe it also sped things up that the TX went back in time. And really, why would it? If there's no Connor to kill there, why not send them to 2014 to wait for 2017? Let's see. And right, there's something about in the first movie, the when the Terminator arrives through time, and the ground underneath is undisturbed, but in this, there's the crater that we're used to from the second movie and on. Yeah, I guess this does have a crater, and the first one doesn't. I don't think differences between timelines is that valuable in this, because it's just not supposed to be the same timeline. Right, there's this thing. Yeah, the interrogator, tells Pops that witnesses saw him fighting with a man on the bridge. That never happened. What witnesses on the bridge, filming the entire police response up close, actually would have seen was him holding up a falling school bus with one hand, which is apparently not worth mentioning by anybody. At the risk of sounding like an apologist, I guess maybe this was due to some sort of script rewrite they didn't catch. The action scene was changed or something. That would be my guess. But I agree, it is definitely, it doesn't make sense. I'm not trying to excuse it. Right, and yeah, there's this thing about Pops infiltrated the place and then he was laid off. And it's like, why, if he was already inside, why not just blow up? Or at least hide the explosives inside vents? At the risk of sounding like an apologist, I figure if he knew that he himself would not be able to successfully blow it up, they needed all three of them. So not if, but that he knew. To be there, and he knew that if he tried, then they would have caught him and improved security. Possibly he would have been somewhere that he couldn't get out of in order to help them. Excuse me. Now, let's see. Yeah, there's this thing about like, oh, it's like the grandfather thing, you know. If you go back in time and kill your grandfather before you were born, you erase you from existence. But, you know, if you erase him from existence, you're never able to travel back in time to kill him. John shouldn't be able to send his father back in time to conceive him. But it's not quite the same, though. If Kyle wasn't sent back, John wasn't conceived, so it's not the same as killing. It's kind of like the opposite. Now, hmm. Okay, now we have reached Metacritic user reviews. Some people say that the let's see. Yeah, some people say that this easily tops the liquid metal effects of the second movie. Some say it doesn't. Hmm. Excuse me. And different people, you know, some people say it's better than this or that Terminator movie. Now, yeah, I guess maybe there aren't more. Let's see. This one guy says, ultimately the film relies on the nostalgia. It tries to remind you of the past Terminator anytime it can with half the dialogue. That's an exaggeration. It's definitely not that much. It is not half of the dialogue. There's a ton of stuff in the movie that isn't in the first. You know, there's the let's see, there's the argument between the two of them. That, you know, the staged argument in the hospital. There's all the talk about old, not obsolete. There's the talking about mating and the talk about how she knows that he must die and he feels like she should have told him and all that stuff. That's not. It's. I mean, he was referencing events, yeah, but it's not about. And it's making you look at these events in a new light. It's again. It's not like just safe and no. Anyway, now this one guy says Emilia Clarke and Jason Clarke are miscast. And the CG is terrible. And then this is one guy who says this version is completely lazy, I thought, and horrid. They absolutely wrote out the last three Terminators. Hey now. They wrote out all 4 previous Terminator movies due to the time travel. Literally, all 4 movies no longer happen the way that, yeah. Now, more people saying the best part is the first 30 minutes. Let's see. There's people who say it's just, yeah, who hate the critics for not liking it. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of audiences who didn't like it either. It's even worse than you might fear. There's nothing to fear but bad Terminator sequels. This one guy says, Sarah doesn't come across as tough, but as a spoiled brat. I guess I can kind of see the maybe. I don't really. What's a? I don't quite agree, but I do see what he means. Now, excuse me. My big beef is with calories. In the original Terminator, he was a battle-hardened vet on a suicide mission. In Genisys, he's a young adult heartthrob. He was so out of character, I thought maybe he was a secret Terminator. Yeah, almost through all the notes. This one guy points out they're really muscular in the future, despite nukes. I mean, really, the first one is the only one where it looks like people have, you know, are living in extreme hardship. It's the first movie and the show, and then that, the future war stuff. Okay, just briefly, guys. I don't agree with this guy, but just this is how he opens his review. No, 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 no. That's pretty funny. So I guess that was it. comparatively a very short video for one of mine. So yeah, I maintain I absolutely love this movie, and yeah, just briefly, I do think that there are some good points on, I want to say, the IMDb goofs, excuse me, some of the plot holes. The ones that I didn't argue against in this video are, I do think, I think all of those, I don't really have any counter argument. And I agree that they didn't realize, excuse me, that those would, yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, so yeah, I still love this movie. I hope you enjoyed watching, as I enjoyed watching the recording. I'll catch you next time.